We do have 50 people in the room, so I guess we can get started. It is a Sunday. It's not really that cold here yet, but they're telling me it's going to get cold. I got 21 degrees right now. It was snowing hard earlier, but it's backed off. Might get a half inch today. But hey, Daniel Kester's in the house, as is Mind Bend, Jerry Brown. Drewski mentions the Lions. We'll talk about them in a second. William Page in Odessa, Texas. Retired Butcher Boy, Sun City, Lincoln Hills, HOA. Low face early for once. Mind Bend, Hobie Jackson. Believe in yourself up there in Ontario. Johnny Knoxville in the house, of course. I sent a note to the Canadian Robot Lady. We'll see if she can check in or not. Blah, blah, blah. How many turnovers? Quite a few. Although Mike Sandra still was behind a couple of those. He, of course, is a former Michigan Wolverine. And when I heard his name, I'm like, oh, this isn't going to be good, especially if they're not careful with where they throw the ball on the field. He is very reminiscent of, like, say, Charles Woodson, where you don't want him near the ball if you are throwing it. Lewis Browning, Johnny Knoxville, I already mentioned you, sir, talking about Depeche Mode, one of my favorite bands back in the day. Believe in Yourself, likes Depeche Mode as well. Manuel Guerra, it's Sunday. Indeed it is. And so we got to talk right off the bat about the big football game last night. I've been telling everyone since I was a young folk that the Detroit Lions are a mirage at best and a hoax in some people's minds, because they always seem to let us down. That is the people of southeastern Michigan, and they had a good year. They won 15 games this year, so they were the number one seed in the playoffs and would have home field advantage for as long as they kept winning up until the Super Bowl. Except they lost last night. And the game looked competitive for a while. But of course, it became apparent that the Lions could not stop the Commanders from doing what they wanted to do. And the Commanders could occasionally stop the Lions. So the Commanders were getting ahead. And then at one point in the game where things were still kind of close, the Lions got called for too many men on the field. And it went from being a fourth down to a first down, and they scored, I think, on the next play, and it just fell apart from there. That's the kind of inexcusable thing that a team playing at that level should not do. That is accidentally have too many people on the field, and that play cost them. And, they may have scored otherwise, but you never know. And it went downhill from there, but there was a bunch of turnovers. Mike Sanders still had 2 interceptions, one of them in the end zone, and another one which destroyed a drive. And so, I last couple episodes of doing live streams here, I had said, well, you know something? They're doing so well. I'm going to back off on my criticism of them, and I'm going to wait and see. And I had a good friend of mine send me a text yesterday and say, hey, Steve, what do you think about the Lions now? Because he knew that I've always been critical. And I wrote him back and I said, we'll wait and see. And it turns out that I was right to be skeptical. But Dan Boyd says reminds him of the Bengals. So Lewis Browning wasted $2 in the Lions from beginning of the season. The birds are free, says my brother drove his son from D.C. to Detroit to watch the game. Yeah, there were some people there rooting for the Commanders in the stands. I saw them. But, man, that place went quiet real early. And that's one of the letdowns, I think, with a lot of professional football compared to college football, is that the pro football fans, at least in Detroit, they go quiet real fast. They give up. They give up mentally very, very quickly. So Daniel Kessler says, Steve, you want someone to remind you to talk about the Lions? Yes, I've remembered on my own. Thank you. Ian McNathan's checking in from a rainy Sun City Center, Florida. And Joe Bonchi says 2 lives in 2 days. Well, the other live was a couple days ago, wasn't it? Wasn't it Friday? I did think I did it Friday. So Bob Blah Blah says the curse of Bobby Lane. No, it's the curse of the Ford family. Ford family's owned the Lions, and they I don't think they care. I don't think they care. I've heard that they stepped it up a little bit, but they're one of those owners that's just kind of like they should just sell it, let somebody else take over. Let someone else take over. Patrick Mulcahy, hi from Disneyland, checking in the checking in from Disneyland. Mindbend, don't forget the uncalled Jared Goff being checked for concussion. Well, yeah, there's a couple calls, but you know something, a game shouldn't boil down to one or two bad calls. I mean, they didn't lose by 1 point, okay? And so there were a couple bad calls. So the thing I feel bad about is the guy whose arm got busted up pretty bad. Oh my gosh. You know, Johnny Knoxville, I agree the refs should have called the hit on Jared Goff. Jared Goff's the quarterback, and he got hit. I forgot what they call it. They don't call it targeting in the NFL, do they? But in college football, it's targeting. And if you inappropriately use your helmets to hit another player, and they didn't call it, but you know, what are you gonna do? It happens. Jennifer Nebraska says, get the algorithm going and hit that thumbs up like button. We're at 82 right now with almost 400 in the room. Chuck Whitehead checks in with a big blue box and says, hello, I guess. You know, you've got the billboard. You should put something there. Joseph Sniadecki says, hi, Steve. Joe from Buffalo. Go Bills. Yeah, I know the Buffalo fans are also some long-suffering folk. So Hezekiah Allerts is laughing my butt off. The best part is I'm a Wolverines fan. Well, I am too. I've always been a Wolverines fan, and the last few years have been a great time to be a Wolverines fan. But I was always skeptical of the Lions. But Skonda Tech, what are your thoughts about Trump becoming POTUS tomorrow? I'm not sure what thoughts I could have that wouldn't be political in nature. But, you know, we had an election. They counted some votes. They determined a winner. It got confirmed by Congress as they do that. And then a new president gets sworn in. So it happens every 4 years. So there you go. Jay Ree 78 says somebody should check to see if the turf at Ford Field is acceptable for sports. So many injuries. Well, the main injury yesterday was the guy whose arm got messed up, but that was because he got pinned badly between two players. He was actually up against a player, and one of his own players hit him from behind. Today is not my birthday. I'm not sure why people keep saying that, but it's not. Dimebag Coins is minus 27 outside right now in Edmonton. It's not my birthday. Sorry. Although Johnny Knoxville says smash the like button. Go right ahead. Go right ahead and smash it all you want, but smash it for any reason you want. Jones Man 08 says, hey buddy, watching you from an airplane as I fly into the polar vortex, actually over Michigan right now. Cool. Geraldine Lima says Southwest Michigan here, 17 degrees, feels like 1. Right now I've got 21 degrees. So Cindy Fan's got 35 in Austin. So Douglas Gaxiola, happy non-birthday. Wade Pittenger, Lions play something akin to football. Yes. No, and the weird thing is, you know, football, like any sport that has a playoff system, has a situation where you play your whole season just to get seeded well in the playoffs, and then it all starts over. So, you know, they can lose 2 games or 5 games in the regular season. It's how you do in the playoffs, right? And the same is true with many other sports. Like, you know, hockey has a playoff season. It's about as long as the regular season. But MH08 says it could be Ted Danson's birthday today. I wouldn't know. Although I like Ted Danson. DePaul 31's got snowflakes starting to fall in Staten Island. Dr. Rick says it's not my birthday either. I suspect that if you were to take a fraction of the people in the audience and put the number 364 over 365, that's approximately what percentage of the audience would not have a birthday today. Super chat for your Wikipedia page being wrong about your birthday. Well, I do not vouch for the Wikipedia page, and I've told people many times you can't trust anything you see on the internet necessarily, especially if it comes from Wikipedia. Drewski, are YouTube live shows monetizable with no commercials? Yes, because there's super chats, and 2, I can switch it to be monetized after I put it up. So they're not monetized live, they're monetized recorded. And that is, in fact, something that I do on these videos. Jay Klein, my birthday was Friday. I still do not put in mid-roll ads, though, because if you monetize and you're not paying attention, it makes the mid-roll. And if I have a 2-hour video like I do, they'll put in like 55 mid-rolls. So David Ladd, good afternoon, everyone. And hope your day is going well, Steve Lehto. And David Ladd posted twice in a row, which we can do now because I don't have the flood controls on. And lately, we've been lucky. Nothing's gotten out of control. Jonesman08 says it is Dolly Parton's birthday, and she and I do, in fact, get confused quite often. Yeah, Joe Bonchi says you need to add leap year into the equation, but the question is putting 364 over 365.25 wouldn't have changed the number that much. But I hear you. I hear you. Offensively normal says 49 and smoky in Southern California. Johnny Knoxville says super chat for no flood controls. MHOH says Dolly Parton has more hair. You know what's funny is if you look back and see pictures of her back in like the 60s, and she was doing that thing she was rocking the big old wig. Oh boy. Joe Funanich says if the world's population is 8 billion, give or take, there are about 22 million people who are having their birthday today, including the fact that you just, have them at random. David Ladd says flow control is a good thing. The podcast I am on, there are times we need that enabled. Well, I've got 487 people in the room, and I'm not worried about the volume of the comments in terms of how many comments there are. What I'm always concerned about is I remember, and maybe they've got this under control, but a few years back when I did these, if I didn't have the flood control on, I would start getting these bots coming in, and the bots would they would become so annoying you had to put the flood control on to shut them off. So Laura Thompson says, hello, Steve from the Texas Golden Triangle. We're supposed to get at least 4 inches of snow on Tuesday, which would be, if we get the 4.5, a record since 1895. Snow in Texas. Sure, why not? Jonesman08, Dolly Parton is so smart and knowledgeable about pretty much everything. And she's also a very nice person. I mean, I understand that, you never really know about people like that in terms of famous people, but I've seen so many people say that she's such a nice person. I've seen her pop up on some shows that weren't as rehearsed as other shows. Like she was on an episode of American Pickers, just talking to, people, and she just comes across very, very genuine. Padre says Dolly's always worn wigs. Yeah, but I'm talking about you know what I'm talking about, right? The big wigs, the big wigs. I'm not talking about big wigs in terms of important people. I'm talking about the big wig that towers over her head. Hang on a second. The first time I'm being forced to go to the question, somebody keeps asking me about the 28th Amendment. Is that the Equal Rights Amendment? I'm not sure. I tend to think that we should have equal rights. The question is whether it needs to be codified in an amendment or not. Aaron Freeman says spring is better for births. And I've always been curious about that. Has anybody ever graphed births over the full year? I bet it's relatively even, but I suspect there are probably some slight variations in there. It's probably very different back when you lived in caves or out in the woods. Where was that? Hang on. Somebody asked a good question and it jumped on me. Oh, well. It'll pop back up, I'm sure. Celtic Identity says TikTok is a good topic right now. Yeah, although, here's the thing. TikTok, so Congress passed a law that was signed by the president saying that TikTok had to divest itself because, run too closely with the Chinese government. I'm not going to get into that because, that's what they said. And so the law got passed. And the law said that they had to either divest themselves and find new owners, or they can't operate in America. And so they challenged that in court, and it made it to the Supreme Court, who last week ruled, and I read the opinion, said that this law is, in fact, constitutional. So we're not going to strike it down. But the law said in it that the president has the power to push something back and if the president pushes it back, then they can try to work something out. So, well, we have an interesting situation because that ruling came down last week, and there's one president there now. There'll be another president tomorrow. That doesn't happen very often. I mean, once every 4 years, but come on. Or 8, I understand. So it's possible that despite the fact that they're down today, they could be back up tomorrow afternoon. And then we just don't know how they'd fix it. But I'm not too worried about that. Dan Boyd, TikTok tack, and of course, he's referring to the tachometer in a Mopar from the late 60s, early 70s. I had one in my Dodge Charger built in 1969. Flat Highway has a question I missed earlier. Does the lemon law apply to commercial trucks? Generally speaking, most states, no. Most states, the lemon laws only apply to consumer products and therefore would not apply to a commercial vehicle. George S. said, living in Michigan, Notre Dame or OSU. I wish they could end in a 0-0 tie. I don't think I can have, you have to understand, I generally don't like Ohio State because I'm a Michigan fan, but I don't like Notre Dame either. But given the two, I guess I'd have to root for Notre Dame, but I can't root for either one. I probably won't even watch it. So what are you going to do? Rolling Rainbow Thunder says, good morning from Northern California. Thank you for your videos. You're a great teacher and justice advocate. I appreciate you. Thank you very much. An advocate, of course, is a word that you pronounce differently if it is a noun or a verb. There's several of those. Ben Cooley says it's a proven fact that before 1900, most births occurred from August to October. That's the reason schools begin a new school year in August. I've also heard that it has a lot to do with the planting seasons on farms, but J-Man Broseph, are you a real person? If I wasn't, would I admit it? Let me think about that for a second. Big Kid Band, this is what's the best way to go about collecting a court judgment lien placed on a non-paying tenant? I'd like to try to garnish their wages, but having a hard time finding out where they work. Not sure what state you're in, but the processes can change from state to state. Question is whether it's worth chasing, but if it is, you can always track the person down if you know where they are and do a debtor's exam where you bring them in and you put them under oath, or creditor's exam. Bring them in under oath and make them answer questions about where they bank, where they work, and all that kind of stuff. I've done them before, but it's got to be about enough money to make it worthwhile. Nikki says TikTok is back. I don't know one way or the other, and I don't do TikToks. So I don't really know. Tim Moore, I'm from Canton, Ohio, and I won't be watching the football game. Isn't Canton home of the Football Hall of Fame? Or am I getting that wrong? Genetic Memory Farms, I'll bet there will be a rather sizable donation to the new administration, and TikTok will continue business as usual. Any takers in that bet give you 3-1. David Turks is set from place in Swartz Creek. What's set in a place from Swartz Creek? Swartz Creek is a town up north and I think west of Flint, Michigan. And I know there used to be a racetrack there called Sports Creek, which I don't think has been in operation for quite some time. I've known people who lived there. Martin says -12 here. Johnny Quest, greetings from an undisclosed location in a nondescript lazy boy recliner. Big Kid Band says, thanks, it's $10,000. Wow, well, that might be worth chasing. Of course, you might be able to get an attorney who does debt collections to handle it for you on a contingency basis. It might be worth it just to get the $6,000 after costs and all that are taken out, but you never know. Hey, Michael Lawless just corrected a typographical error that makes previous statement make more sense. Bought a car, 90 days and still no plates or title from the dealer. Should I be worried or patient? Both. Depends on the state you're in, but some states are very, very picky about how quickly you plate your car. And if you've got the paper plate in the car that says that it's temporary, it's good for 90 days, and you're 95 days later, and a cop pulls you over, you show them the paper and go, look, I'm just waiting for the. They should be cool about it, but you never know, right? And so you have to call the dealership and possibly the state. The state might be able to help you, like the DMV in Michigan, it's the Secretary of State's office. It's always a possibility, but you never know. So yeah, Mark Miller asks, is that Carvana? Oh boy. And Mike Johnson's checking in from Westland as the off. I've got friends in Flint. I'll have to ask them about that because I know they were making progress in fixing the pipes and so on. Bahamut 416 is my understanding. Generally, with lawsuits, you have to wait until after you've incurred a loss to sue. Is that also the case with estate inheritances, or can you preemptively sue? I'm not quite sure what you mean by an estate inheritance in a preemptive lawsuit. I'm not quite sure what that means. But generally speaking, you have to have incurred a loss or a threatened loss, but a threatened loss is a little different, harder to prove sometimes. So, um, PL Demar Gray says in Wisconsin, all you used to need was a piece of cardboard with the letters LAF as in a license applied for. Daniel Kester, what happens if new cars sent to the dealers don't get sold? They keep lowering the prices on them till they become like fire sales. It happens from time to time. Steve G, paper plates are for picnics. Yeah, but they often refer to those temporary tags as. I never quite understood the idea of a tag, a metal plate, really, and a tag, but that's what they call them. So it's more a term of art. Jerry C says Steve's a real person. So I've got, but how do I know Jerry's a real person? Eccentricity, Gulf Shores, Alabama. Here, our polar vortex arrives Tuesday. Yeah, no, we're gonna get that in the next couple days. In fact, I forgot now what day it is. It's either Monday or Tuesday. They say that let's see, overnight low tonight 1 degree, and then Tuesday a high of 5 and a low of -6. Jerry Brown, do law offices open on MLK Day? Well, courts are generally closed. There's no mail. Banks, I think, are closed. I think Wall Street's closed. So generally speaking, if anybody goes into work on that day, they're either doing catch-up work, or it might be that somebody wants to meet them on that day and they got time off. So 55 Sedell, odd question. Do you have any tattoos? No, I do not. But thank you for asking. Jones Man 08 says, and get this, despite the name, the Canadian robot lady is a real person too. Oh, she is. Although I've never met her. But I have spoken to her on the phone many times. And if she's not real, someone's doing a really good job with that AI. Mikhail Timonen says, thank you for all the great work you do, and I appreciate that very much. Thank you. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Mikhail, I think, but Timonen. And I'm pronouncing that as if it's Finnish, which I don't think it is. It might be Timonen, but you never know. Surfing Bird says Steve could be an urban legend like Chupacabra or Bigfoot. I think I'd rather be Chupacabra. Although, quite frankly, Bigfoot, I think, I don't know. If one walked out into the street and said, hey, everybody, I'm here, interview me, I think Bigfoot would probably get more attention. I'll have to think about that. Who I'd rather be. Saint Spire, does that freeze fire in hydrants? Yeah, I wonder about that. I don't know. I've never stopped to think about what might cause a fire hydrant to malfunction. I have to imagine that there's some trick to, if it stays that cold that long, to getting fire hydrants to work. And of course, you always see these fires that happen in the wintertime because people are often using bad heat sources or whatever. And then when they put the fire out, there's a pile of charred remains covered in ice. So Take America Back says, relax, we're all a simulation. MHOH says, in what start naming winter storm? I think the Weather Service has been doing it for years because nobody paid attention. I just think it's weird. They've got a list of names they use every year, and then it's like they got to have a name that starts with X or a name that starts with Y, and they do them in order. And I understand why they do it, but it just always struck me as a very, very strange, uh, a strange convention. Genetic Memory Farms says, for a cold climate, Michigan seems to have a lot of motorcycle clubs. Do you have any guesses as to why that is? Yeah, because people live in cold weather. When it warms up, we go crazy, and we want to get out. You want to see motorcycles and convertibles? Go out on the first warm day of spring. I'm talking about it can be March 3rd. If it's warm out and the pavements, get out their vehicles and get them out there. Thomas Johnson, ever see the Grateful Dead? No, I didn't. I'll admit I was not a huge fan of the Grateful Dead, but I know people who are, and I wouldn't. I wouldn't begrudge people who are. Victor Sauvage, when are we going to get a peek at your intriguing secretary / announcer / mistress of ceremonies? I've interviewed her on this channel. I don't think the videos are up anymore. I go through quite a bit, and I do remove some older videos, and so there you go. MHOA says it's the Weather Channel, not the Weather Service. I think the National Weather Service is involved quite a bit in that. The Weather Channel, I would assume, is a privately run thing, but I could be wrong. Michael Johnson says Steve is real. I've met him in person at the Autorama. Was that last year or the year before? I'll be at the Autorama this year. I keep thinking I should bring a stack of books with me to a place like the Autorama and announce when I'll be there, and just say, hey, if you bump into me at the Autorama, say hi, and I'll give you a book. Although I'm not, with my luck, I'll have 100 people show up, and I won't have enough books. Oh boy. Fatty Butterpan says, Stephen Wright said, I remember the day the candle shop burned down. Everyone just stood around and sang happy birthday. Bob blah blah says, if you don't like the weather, just break out a Sharpie. And that's the closest I can get to a political joke today. Oh boy. Denise Marie says, Steve is real. He's just a cat. Which which cat-like attributes do you think I have? Do I knock stuff off shelves? Or do you think I tiptoe through the snow like I can't get my paws wet? Leo the Nomad, what do you do first on a daily basis? YouTube stuff or lawyer stuff? No, YouTube stuff. I don't know if it goes back to me doing the Free Press. I delivered the Free Press as a young man, the Detroit Free Press. And that was a morning newspapers. I had to get up at like 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning, go deliver my papers, come home, take a shower, and then go to school. And I was doing that in like ninth grade. And so I became a morning person. Like I can wake up. I can wake up at 5:01, roll out of bed and mentally sharp. And so the sharpest I am, believe it or not, is in the morning. Okay. And so I get up in the morning and take a shower, eat breakfast, and shoot my video. Then I do my work stuff. And so I get that done, get it out of the way. Usually it goes relatively smoothly. But it's largely because if I shot them later in the day, I've tried that before. I'm not quite as mentally sharp later in the day. It's a minor thing, but I can tell the difference. MHOH says Steve could be a hologram. And I wouldn't even need to be a hologram if I'm on camera, right? Because it's two-dimensional here, right? So, oh boy. The Salt King shall rise with a wood chipper army, says Rick R. Salt King. Oh, Daniel Kester, got any new lawyer jokes? Not really. DePaul, Steve is real. I met him in Pennsylvania. I met a couple people in Pennsylvania at a Tucker event at the museum there in Hershey, which is pretty cool. They had like 7 or 8 Tuckers there, and I got to speak. And most everyone I met was very nice. One woman came up and yelled at me, but she had an axe to grind, and had several other people go, yeah, she's like that. So Robert Heinrich says secretly Steve is a Hertz employee. I could also be an RV salesperson, right? Carl's Corner, Steve is sharp till 5:02. Victor Savage, this program demystifies the law. I hope so. I hope so. I want the law to be more accessible. A lot of people get scared when they think about the law. I've had people call my office and I'm talking to them and they're like, I've never spoken to an attorney before. I'm like, calm down. just a guy. Oh, boy. Robert Leonard, have you followed up on the girl in Redding, California, who filed the lawsuit over the goat? I'm trying to remember if I did. I know I did a couple videos on that. I think I did. John Zablak is calling out the D104 microphone, and it's called a lollipop. And there is one behind me, right back there. You can't see it because I think it's hidden behind the Shure. But I got a couple nice mics back there. Marjan K. Kavusi, have you ever thought about doing a book signing? I've done hundreds of them. Generally, I do book signings affiliated with bookstores or libraries or places where I give talks about subjects in my books. So I'll probably be doing a ton of book signings when my updated Turban Car book comes out, but that'll be later on down the road. Padre says Steve could be Max Headroom 15 minutes in the future. I wish I could do the thing that Max Headroom did, but Chuck White, is there such a thing as night court, or is that made up for TV? No, I believe there is, or at least there was. And I think it was in situations where if you have a municipality where so many people get arrested at night that the jails get full, they go, why don't we just have a judge on hand right now who can hear some of these cases to take care of them, you know? So D Wood CNA checking in from Niles, Michigan, one of my favorite little places. Lewis Browning says Steve does book signings through the mail. Yeah, that's not quite the same, though, but I do. Rick R., my family and I love watching your videos. Thank you. Well, I appreciate that very much. Thank you. I appreciate that. Andy New York 29 says, when I wake up in the morning, I'm usually sharper and get more done than in the afternoon. That's actually something that they talk about. There is something to be said for most people when doing things that are technical or mathematical. Most people are sharper in the morning. So if you ever had the bad fortune of having an afternoon math class in high school, you might know what I'm talking about. So I always had trouble with those too, but they're in the morning, it's much, much easier. So Ihab Halim says, wow, karma and YouTube brought me to you, Steve. Paul E., if you could be Max Headroom, what show would you take over? Oh, I would just do a talk show. I would just be the host. People News Today says, I'm talking my daughter into being a civil rights lawyer. She's 17. Good idea. Not a bad idea if she's interested in it. I mean, she can go out and know that she's doing good work and doing good things, and accomplishing something worthwhile. Of course, she's 17, so there might be all kinds of things that distract her between now and then, meaning other majors, for instance, and so on. But it's a possibility. Lewis Browning says a signed Superbird book on a sale on eBay. Yeah. I tried to get that thing back into print. I'm still working on it. So Marjan K. Cavu says, can you please post your next book signing? I probably will. I tend to publicize those things. I post them on Facebook and Twitter. If you don't follow me on Twitter, that's still a thing. Oh, Steve Talley says the wind chill in northwestern Minnesota right now is 37 degrees below zero. I assume that's Fahrenheit. Airplane 247 says, hi, have a question? I don't have a question. Do you? Joe Bonchi. I always went to work an hour early to get more done. Well, especially like I was as a lawyer would go to my office early and sit at my desk and read the paper and drink my Diet Coke. That's how I wake up. I don't drink coffee. Diet Coke. And uh yeah, the office is quiet, the phone doesn't ring, and it was great. Tiger Man 99515, what's the fastest you've ever been in a car? I've been north of 150 a few times in a couple different cars. Notice I didn't say I was driving. I didn't say I was on the road. Oh, Surfing Bird. America needs to import engineers. Tell her to be an engineer. The problem with something like that is a lot of those things are cyclical, and you'll discover that like everybody heard that, so everybody went to engineering school. Next thing you know, there's tons of them. James Scott says you mentioned in a video about a person on trial for murder where no body was found, and you mentioned a book written about people who disappear on purpose. And I'm wondering what the title of it is. I'm trying to remember. It's a couple years old, so that's part of the problem. Let's see here. I might recognize it. I'm not seeing it. I just Googled a couple words here. But there are a bunch of books on the topic. Some allegedly written by security experts and CIA people. But the book I'm yeah, no, I don't recognize the title. I might take a look at that later on and remind me next week to see if I came up with anything. Irish Scott Ladd, Lehto Road in Crystal Falls Township. Any relation? No, but I'm familiar with that. So when I go to the Upper Peninsula and I go over to the Kuna, I tend to go up through the Lower Peninsula, west on US 2, and then up through either Gurmfask or McMillan, and then across the Seney Stretch, Munising, and that way. But on the rare occasions I went around Lake Michigan the other way, and through Chicago and up, you then go up through Crystal Falls, and someplace outside of Crystal Falls, the town, you see this sign. It goes Lehto Road, Lehto Road. Last time I went by, there was snow out there, and I climbed through a snowbank to get my picture next to it. Didn't come out really good, but I'm familiar with it, but I'm not sure of any relationship. My family was in the Hancock area, at least with respect to the Lehto side of my family. Bill Krebs, do you have a story of where someone's ignorance of the law ever left you speechless? Not really, but the sad part, and I tell you this right now, the sad part is how often you encounter judges who don't know the law, and then when you're arguing, trying to get a judge to understand the law, and your opponent goes, "Oh, he's wrong, Your Honor. You are correct." And I remember one of the most frustrating arguments I ever had, and I won the argument, was an opponent of mine trying to tell a judge that the Uniform Commercial Code didn't apply to consumer transactions. Which is why it says this affects all sales of goods. And he goes, well, that's sales of goods between merchants. Why does it not say that then? And he goes, well, it's like implied. And when you find yourself talking to a judge about statutory construction and saying, Your Honor, the words say this, not this. The fact that they say this means that, not that. The judge is like, Mr. Lehto, I think you're right. I'm like, of course I'm right. No, I couldn't say that. Oh, Robert Heinrich says, is that cold in the U.S.? I'm here in Vienna. Yes, it's very cold here. 21 degrees. I got my ground covered in snow about 2 inches deep, and it's supposed to drop down towards 0 on Tuesday for a high. Now, this is Fahrenheit, so you got to do the math and all that, but there you go. Robert Heinrich says, I see. Here it has snowed a few millimeters at best. We call it mouse knee deep. Oh. Yeah, no, funny thing is, I mean, I don't have dogs right now, but when I had dogs, I became aware of when it became basically armpit deep for them because, when they're walking around the snow, the second it gets up to here is where they get like really like uncomfortable out there. Victor Sauvage says regarding the Supreme Court in Michigan on the Lugnut case, maybe lawmaking is too serious to be left to courts. Well, yeah, no, it's that's one of the craziest things, and I'll be talking to people about the Michigan courts, and I'll say that they've done some really stupid things. And I tell them the lug nut story, and they're like, "What?" And they go, "That can't be true." It is true. It is true. Rolling Rainbow Thunder says prayers for everyone in the polar vortex. Stay warm and safe. Robert Heinrich says, yes, 0F is quite chilly. We have 0 centigrade, more or less, which is not so bad. Yeah, no, of course. Yeah. And of course, those metric conversions confuse all of us, but I'm sure you understand that 0 Fahrenheit is well below 0 centigrade. So, Irish Scott Lad, do you have an amateur radio license? No, I do not. Johnny Knoxville, is that a Garmin InReach Mini 2 satellite device behind you on the small shelf? Right there, that orange thing is in fact an InReach. I'm not sure if it's not a mini. It's not the little square one. It's the full size one. I love that thing. It's one of those gadgets that makes you want to go outside and play with it. You're looking for reasons to use it. So Craig Garbett points out that 40 below is 40 below Fahrenheit or Celsius. So if you graph the two on a chart, that's where they cross. Oh. Greg Havens, in regards to the stopping of armored cars by law enforcement seizing money from dispensaries, would that be considered armed robbery? Well, some people would consider it that, but prosecutors and the law don't consider it that, and that's the problem. So, Greg Lehto, do you still have the video of you as a passenger in the race car posted? And good to see you, my friend. I'm trying to remember what channel it's on, but I think I do. Because hang on. What would I have called that? Oh, nope, nothing there. Hang on. Or is it my main account? I know this is thrilling content. When you say Steve playing with his phone. Yes, the video is still up. It's called Riding in Richard Petty's Superbird. It was published in 2015. And the screen grab there is the view I had looking through the windshield of the car at the Atlanta International Speedway. And it's as of right now, let me get some statistics on it. Well, I don't know if I can do that. I've already lost it. Anyways, yeah. So if you simply go to my main content page and type in the word Petty, you'll find it. Or if you go to YouTube and type in Steve Lehto, Richard Petty, you'll find it. And what happened was I met the guy who owned one of Richard Petty's actual race cars from back in the day that were owned by Petty Racing and raced in all those races. And he brought it to a winged car event in Atlanta in 2015. We were all at the track, and I saw the guy, and I go, "Hey, is somebody riding with you?" And he goes, "No, why?" And I go, "Can I ride with you?" He goes, "I don't have a seat." I go, "I'll sit on the floor." He goes, "Okay." And so I'm hanging onto a roll bar, and I've got a GoPro camera in my hand. Occasionally, I hold it up over the roof, and occasionally, I'm just doing this, just panoramic. And there was a pace car on the track you were not allowed to pass to keep people from getting crazy. And it doesn't take you long to figure out what you do is you let the pace car get way ahead of you, and then you floor it and catch up with the guy. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. So, Kilroy, minus 28 here in Minnesota. Um, Dan Boyd's phones are terrible for watching and interacting with YouTube or anything. That is actually true. But I often sit at this desk right here. This is where I edit my videos. And so in front of me, I've got a decent size, nice screen. Don't know how big that is, but it's a decent size. And I watch so much stuff on this that I forget that a huge, huge number of people in my audience watch on something this big. And therefore it becomes so much harder to figure it out. And yes, the background screen on my phone is in fact a shot through the front window of my Cobra. So Jeff Trivia says Lewiston, Michigan is 14, and Lewiston, Michigan is up further up this way, as I recall, kind of not far from Gaylord. Am I correct? I think so. Quantum Leap, I really enjoy the content. Well, thank you. Brianna CC, you own a Cobra and a Viper. Yes, I do. I am Elmer J. Fudd, millionaire. I own a mansion and a yacht. No, yeah, no, and that's why if you look at the cars on the shelf behind me, right there, hang on, right there, there's a Cobra, and the far end of the shelf is a Viper, and those are models of cars that I actually own. Although my Cobra is not a real Cobra; it is a Cobra replica. So it's made by Backdraft Cobra. Chuck Puck says if it looks good on a phone, it will look great on larger screens, and vice versa. Oh boy, Victor Sauvage, run for office? Not me. Never, never. I don't care. To me, it's not worth it to go through the hassle. I don't want people taking out ads calling me names. Life is difficult enough as it is. Oh boy. Harawa Gangsta says you need a Super Snake or a King Snake Mustang. I was watching the Mecum auctions over the weekend, and I know it's still going on, but I saw a couple really nice Shelby Mustangs. I love is a 68 or 69 convertible. Those are gorgeous cars. Brian B, do you have a Hertz T-shirt? I don't think I do have a Hertz T-shirt. I don't think so. Dan Boyd, you've got to get yourself a Charger Daytona and a turbine. I would love to. Charger Daytona sent me back about, I don't know, $500,000, and a turbine would send me back about $5 or $6 million if one was for sale, and none of them are. I know people right now who would buy one in an instant if one was for sale, and they're not. Keith PV House reminds us that your mother is a hamster, and your father smells of elderberries. Engine Ferris, I still wonder what kind of cat Steve would be. Operated on 2 days ago, so I'm still on the good pain meds. That might explain it. Jason Brindamar, I want to see the coyote sign you mentioned last week. Hang on. It just happens to be nearby, and it was just out of reach, so I got to take these off. So don't. Hang on. Wow. Such a simple operation. It becomes. Hang on. I had it right the first time, but I twisted this one. That's the problem. There we go. Okay. Watch a man mess around with the monitors. Yeah, so this was sent in to me, and I've seen various takes on this, including some posted near parks. And it appears to be a warning about coyote activity, and it points out that you should call animal control if, among other things, you see him carrying a box marked Acme or he's detonating TNT. So sadly, the way my set has developed, I don't have room for verticals as much as I got room for horizontals, but I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out someday. Dan Boyd says instead of running for office, you could run from office. Alexander Gunakis is awesome. I've commented at least 20 times over 6 months, but I've never gotten read getting skipped because they come in so fast. It doesn't happen 20 times. Well, I'm sorry for that. I don't recognize your name, so I have actually been missing what you post, and I apologize. And so I do have like I said, I often go back and watch these videos later and pay attention to the questions I missed because I'm curious. But quite often, if I'm explaining something, I look away from this so it doesn't distract me, and so stuff can go by. So I apologize for that. Um, Robert Heinrich says, "Oh no, someone will now give you a Hertz shirt. I wish they would. Double XL." Padre Petty's 1970 Superbird was at a Meekum auction yesterday. The white one, I believe I saw that. I don't know if I saw what it sold for, but I did see several. I did see several Superbirds go by. Dimebag Coins, since you're not interacting with any of us, why are you wearing in-ear monitors? Just to hear the sound of your own voice? Well, that would be the only thing you're monitoring when, in fact, you're wearing monitors while you're talking. So, yes. Louis Browning says Lady Liberty looks good. If you're referring to the new statue on the set, I believe it's Lady Justice. She's got scales in one hand, and I believe a sword in the other. Although I've always thought that Lady Justice could have, like, scales in one hand and like a hot dog in the other, but oh boy, Roxanne liked the sign. Carl's Corner says, Stevie, I have a green screen and you can change it often if you want. I've toyed with the idea about getting an extremely high res photograph of my background and then just green screening it. But the problem is then I can't change stuff in the background as easily. Robert Torre says a 440 Daytona sold for $418,000. Yeah, they've had a couple Hemis that went for $1 million. So Quantum Leap, you like Stahl's Motors? Yes, I assume you're referring to the Stahl Museum in Michigan. Beautiful place, very, very cool place. I've been there many times. They've got a Chrysler Turbine car, they've got a Tucker, and they've got all kinds of other very, very fascinating things. Check it out. Standard deviation is a scale in one hand and a Hurst shifter in the other. Oh boy. Steve G, Matchbox or Hot Wheels? I never played with either of those very much when I was younger. I remember having friends who had the Hot Wheels sets, and you'd set them up, and it always seemed to. We tended to lose interest after a little while. We'd go outside and play. So, Reinhard Man says Paul Newman's 917 was bid to $25 million yesterday, about half of what they wanted, but the bid increments were $1 million apiece. Betty Boop says, good crowd today. Too cold to mow the lawn. That could be. I got 633 in the house right now. Believe in yourself. Have you ever watched Dead Dodge Garage? I don't think so. Like Motor Trend, or what channel is it on? Tater Savage, greetings from Minnesota again. Eric in Tennessee, have you ever owned a pickup? I owned an M35 Deuce and a Half, an M35 A2, built by AM General, an Army truck that had a gigantic pickup bed for hauling troops around. But that's the only thing that I actually have owned that looked like a pickup. JP says the Jaguar from the 3 Austin Powers movies sold at Meekum for $880. It's a neat car, it's kind of cool. So Believe in Yourself says Dead Dodge Garage is a YouTube channel. Oh, I'm sorry, I did not know that. So Long Black Train, what do you think about the Mazda Rotary? I've never owned one, but I knew people who did, and I'm fascinated at the concept, and I thought it was cool that somebody did that. I mean, car companies have had technology around they decided not to invest in, so I kind of like it when people do that and go, "Hey, let's see if this works." So, Void 425 says, "So what you're saying is the only truck you owned was for hauling bodies?" Yeah, but the same is true of airplanes and buses, right? Sometimes I listen to myself. Did you watch Heavy Rescue about the tow truck drivers? Yeah. I've seen that too. I admit I haven't seen it in a little while, but I've watched it before. So Michigan Outdoorsman, that's so cool. Deuce for the win. Yeah, I don't have it anymore. I would consider getting another one, but they take up so much space. I had to put mine in my old garage sideways, and it took up 2 parking spaces. So, oh, Dan Boyd says a rotary is the roots blower of engines. The Michigan Outdoorsman says the Deuce be the ultimate winter Michigan truck. First of all, it's got ground clearance. It's insane. I mean, even at the axles, the ground clearance is crazy. And then all 3 axles drive, and the back 2 are doubles. So you've got, if you engage the front axle, 10 tires churning. I drove that thing through so much stuff and never even paused to think I could get stuck. And even if I had, it had a winch. Never would have gotten stuck. Oh, boy. Chuck White had a Miss Barrett Jackson auctions. I haven't seen a Barrett Jackson auction in a while. I'm wondering if they don't show them anymore, or is it just they don't do as many as Meekum? Because Meekum does a bunch. They do Indy, they do Kissimmee, I think they do Scottsdale, and it might just be they do more. I don't know. Betty Boop, my first car was a 66 Dodge Dart. Paid $1,000 for it in 77, 25,000 miles. Sold it for $800 in 1984 with 52,000 miles. Great car. Yeah, I'm guessing it probably had like a slant 6 in it or something. But those are neat little cars back in the day. Jimmy Hoffa says, Steve, are you going to hunker down on Monday and Tuesday? It's going to be cold here in Michigan. Yes. Yes. That's where you try not to go outside if you can avoid it. Michael Oshango, have you ever owned or driven a first or second generation Mercury Cougar? No, I have not. I'm familiar with them, but I've never known anybody who had one. So David Phillips says you need a bigger garage. That is something that occasionally occurs to me. But I'm not sure if I've mentioned this before. I recently built a garage. And so, excuse me. This, by the way, this is for those people who are into sounds. You know, you watch channels where somebody like eats or crunches something or whatever. You get to hear me pouring water from a thermos. And yes, it is a thermos because the water is ice cold. But anyways, I built a garage. It's a 3-car garage. And I thought, well, I put my 2 cool cars in there and on all my lawn stuff. And almost immediately, I'm like, yeah, I should have built a bigger one. Dan Boyd says, I think Barrett Jackson just has like 2 or 3 big auctions a year. Funky Monk, is the person that does your outros your wife? No. You must have missed earlier where I said, I've never met the person who does my outros. She lives in Canada. But she's a very nice person. I've talked to her on the phone many, many times. And I correspond with her all the time. Red Fox Mad, what do you think the U.S. will pass a classic car ban? No, they'd have a hard time getting that passed. There would be an uproar. Kevin says Barrett Jackson Scottsdale is coming up. It's on the History and FYI channel. Yeah, and that's the thing, is what channel these things are on. I always forget. I've got one of them cable systems with 900 channels and nothing's on. And I always forget what channel I'm watching. I just know the shows I watch. And some of the shows I watch are actually things I've set to record. So I've even forgotten what day of the week some shows are on. I just know that it pops up on my DVR and I watch it. Tiger Man 99515 says that's what a shed is for. Well, true. Oh, Jimmy Hoffa, did you add a room for your groundhog in the new garage? I should have. Oh, my brother once had a problem with stray cats, and he felt sorry for them, so he built a little cat house. And this cat that would come by would climb in there, and I think he put a light bulb in there, something for heat. And one day he walked out there and opened up. There's a raccoon in there. Like, dude, you can't chase me out. This thing's too nice. Cyberdoc, take care, and chat. Got to run. Peace. Vorpal Bite, do you know anybody under 40 that can drive a stick shift? I've known some people who can, but you have to have the opportunity to learn. And who's going to let you practice on their car? Yeah, Scott Summers said I thought the Barrett Jackson auction was coming up also. So standard deviation of it possums come into my house and eat cat food. Alexander Ganaka, I practiced manual on details at my first job. Well, I drove a tow truck at the gas station back when I was in high school, and one of them, there's two tow trucks. One of them was a manual, and it was so funky. The clutch was everything was out of whack. They didn't care, and I learned to drive basically on that. I had driven a couple other manuals, but not as much. But I really got good at driving that thing, and later on, I've had many. I've had many. My Viper is a manual, obviously. So, um, William Stanley says not long ago I came into the house. My two dogs had somehow caught a possum, and they're chilling on the couch where they had it between them like weird ass Lady in the Tramp situation. The funny thing about the possum is if it's playing dead, it'll just do that thing. And I've mentioned before that I had a possum running around my property a couple weeks ago, and I got a picture of it. I had never seen one during the day on my property. I'm sure they're out there. I've just never seen one. And I'm like, "What are you doing out?" And it looked at me like, "Kind of like, what are you doing out?" And it took off running. So, Nick, I learned at 10 years old to drive a clutch. Good for you, Jeff. Trivia. I'm 34 and I can drive a stick up to 18 speeds. Yeah, I've never had the opportunity to drive a big rig. I assume that's a little more complicated, although I'm sure that in some respects, some of it's the same. Vacusimago says it's interesting to see people's opinions on things you bring up. Oh, we've got opinions. We've got opinions. Marjan Kaikavusky says, "What do you think about the future of EV cars?" Scotty doesn't like them. Scotty doesn't know. No, I'm just joking. Scotty, that's a reference to a song in a movie called Euro Trip. Scotty doesn't like lots of things. And I've mentioned before, I personally don't mind the idea of an electric car. They just don't suit my needs yet. But if they ever come along with one that's got the range to get me where I want to go, and if I can bring it home and plug it in and never put gas in it, yes, sign me up. It'll be a little while before I get there, though. Douglas Gaxiola, I drove nothing but a manual from 86 to '06. I really miss driving with a stick. I'd like to get a new truck with a stick, but there aren't that many these days. Yeah. I mean, I've had a bunch of Ford Explorers in a row. They're all automatics, but I was thinking about all the cars I've owned that were manuals. So I got my Viper. I had a Jeep Wrangler. I had a Chevy Monza. I had my M35 Deuce and I had a few others in there. And the amazing thing is that in all the time I've owned manual transmission cars, I've never once had to replace a clutch. And what's funny is I've posted videos of myself driving my Viper, and occasionally I'll leave my hand down near the shifter, and people mistake that for you resting your arm on the shifter. And a lot of people go, "Oh, dude, you're wrecking your transmission. You don't know how to drive a clutch." I ain't wrecking nothing. Trust me. Bivouac. Go Lehto, you rule. Go Lehto. Go Lehto. Oh, Hatbox. I could not teach my daughter to drive a stick shift. I tried. It's on some level you've got to explain what you're doing, but it's not. It's like you don't have a complete understanding of it, but it's just you have to explain how these two pedals are used opposite of each other. As you let the clutch out, you put the gas down. As you back off and as you clutch in, off the gas. And then, but there is a sense you have to feel the clutch engaging. And that's the thing. So I've not taught anyone that I can think of how to drive a clutch, but I think I could, but I don't, right now, if I was going to teach someone how to drive a clutch on one of my cars, I'd be like, let's go and drive my Viper. And I'm not teaching someone how to drive a clutch on my Viper. So The birds are free says, my dad insisted on teaching all 5 of us to drive a stick. I have never driven one since. I also think it's a good idea to literally make somebody who just gets a driver's license change the tire on a car. Because you don't want to be out in the middle of nowhere, the flat tire going, I don't know how to do this. What if you can't call somebody? And I had a friend of mine who lives not far from me call me one night, or actually it was the afternoon, and said, hey, can you come over here and help somebody? And okay. And I just assumed I was going over to help them do something. And as I pulled up, there was a car on the road in front of this house where my friend lives. And my friend walks out and goes, he needs help changing the tire on his car. And it was a teenage kid who had a car. And he goes, I'm really sorry. He goes, I don't know how to change this. And I said, really? He goes, yeah. I said, okay. I got work gloves in my truck, got my work gloves out. I changed the tire for him. I go, you might want to watch this. And I showed him how to do it. Never saw him again. Don't know if it took or not. Beetle Bailey says, hello, everyone. Just another thought gone says 1965 International Scout 3 on the tree at 7. My family had 2 international travel-alls back in the 60s, which I believe were both up here, although the second one may have been down here. But I remember watching my parents driving the 3 up there, and that's something I've never done. Every manual transmission I've ever driven was down here. So, Suzanne K, everyone should know how to jumpstart a car. That's another one. Because you do it wrong, you can screw stuff up. Brianna CC says, how do you break in a stick shift? You don't need to break it in. You just need to learn how to drive it without damaging it. Aaron L says, I could and did do it with an old school jack. The new ones are bad. No, that's true. That's true. I actually have a bottle jack in my garage. And that's the thing with a big heavy duty base, and you crank it from the side and it lifts, and it can lift anything. You can lift a house off the foundation with it. And I bought it originally to work on my M35. But if I'm working on any vehicle of mine, I jack it up just far enough to get that under there and then use that, because it can't tip off that, and it can raise more and it holds position better. And the worst part is somebody gets a flat tire and they're on the side of the road and there's dirt underneath the car. And you start putting a jack, and then you see the jack just going into the dirt. Nick says new cars don't have spare tires. That can be a problem. Another story altogether. Don says cross shifted one day, missed second to third, but went to first and ripped the clutch plate apart. There you go. Lexico, I'm 52. In 52 years, never driven an automatic, but I live in Holland. Holland, the country, or Holland, Michigan? Classic Computer says, Steve, have you ever been to the Pomona Car Show and Swap Meet? No, but I've been to the Pomona Dragway, and also the little town there called Laverne, not far away from Pomona. Kevin Smith, who's the sexy voice in your intro? That would be the Canadian robot lady. Her real first name is Heather, and she does live in Canada, and she's a voiceover artist, is a good friend of mine and a good friend of the show. Mark Miller says it's warmed up to 17F where he is. I still got 21F right now. John Michael Karma, I jacked up half a house 7 inches with bottle jacks. Really? I've seen somebody make some major adjustments to a house with floor jacks, which is in many respects the same kind of idea. Just enough leverage, you can do anything, you know. Carl Pratt, my first car was a 65 Impala, 3 on the tree. Now I've got a 70 Nova, 427 big block, 5-speed, good times. I assume that's not your daily driver though, right? I always like to tell people that the Nova is just like the typical car. It's just a car, you know. It wasn't styled really beautifully. It's relatively utilitarian, but they made so many of them, and there's so many of them out there that, you know, nowadays, if you found one in a junkyard, it was complete, but just sitting in a junkyard, me and two of my brothers could get it running in about half an hour. I mean, it just doesn't matter. It's just a car. Kayla McComber -2 in Montana. Eric, does she come up with those fun sayings at the end of the videos, or is that you? That is actually a community project. Hey, check it out. I've got a Band-Aid on my elbow. I send her ideas. She comes up with ideas. Other people send me ideas. And it's just like anything else. You got an idea for a story that you want me to cover on the show. You send it to me at the email address I'm about to type in here. Use that address only, contrary to anything you've been told by anybody else. And if you send in an idea for a quote or a funny saying, I will forward it to her. She keeps track of them, and then she records a stack of them one at a time. So there you go. Yeah, David Cuney says just a car is not something you can buy anymore. Yeah, no, that's the problem. And I've mentioned before my ongoing dissatisfaction with that brand new Ford Explorer. It just bothers me, all of the things it does and doesn't do. And it's just, and I have an '02 Ford Explorer and a 2024 Ford Explorer. And I often drive the '02 more often. Actually, I drive it more often than I drive the new one. For long trips and stuff, I'll take the new one. But just running around town, take the old one. It's just easier, it's simpler, and more fun. So, Hatbox, I taught myself on a Pinto. I'd been riding dirt bikes and shifting gears, so it wasn't much different. Same concept, yeah. Yeah. Oh boy. Reinhard, man, I always wanted a Merkur XR4 Ti. That's when Ford Motor Company took the wacky naming conventions to an all-time high, because there was a time between, like, say, 1975 and I don't know, 2000, where car companies would just start slapping letters on things and numbers on things, and XR4 Ti. And you could ask somebody what it means. They probably had some explanation, but it's like back when everything that Nissan made was SX. It's an SX. Gee, I wonder why they're using those two letters. Oh boy, Jack W. What motor is in that '02? Whatever the bulletproof one is, it's got that one. It's got 160,000 miles on it. The previous one I had that I had right before that had 237 on when I got rid of it, and nothing ever went wrong with it. John Michael Karma says, I have a bottle of Jack. Oh boy, I had a friend who had an XR4 Ti. I mean, it was a neat looking car, and it had that weird spoiler thing on the back, but 18 to Q KFTW's money shift is shifting from high to low and over revving the valve train. Yeah, that's a potential problem. I know some high performance cars will actually have a lockout to keep you from accidentally doing that. Yeah, blah blah blah. I own. Oh, you still own them? Two Merkur XR4 Ti's with a dual whale tail, one stick, one auto. I think my friend's was a stick, but I'm not 100% certain. Padres says the Merkur was German. Yes, German in origin, but sold in America under the auspices of the Ford Motor Company. Marjan, have you ever bought a car from another country? No. And had it shipped to the United States? How hard is it to do that? It's expensive, but it can be done. I also know guys who ship cars out of the country, and they can do that as well. Uh, Get Me a Gator says, for your information, the payphones are still there in Hessel. I'm not sure where I was talking about that, other than here maybe, but I'm sure I mentioned it someplace else. But you cross the Mackinac Bridge and hang a right after you go up a little ways, and then you can follow the northern shore of Lake Huron or the southern shore of the Upper Peninsula. A little ways over, there's a little town called Hessel. Really, really cool little town, right in the water. And there's a marina there, and they often do a boat show there. And the last time I was there was a payphone with the old box, and next to it was a payphone on a post. And I forgot if there's payphones on both. There's two or just the one. But I took a picture of it because payphones are such unusual things now. So yeah, I'm glad to hear they're still there. Johnny Knoxville Merkur is a German Ford. And Dan Boyd says Lincoln Mercury dealers sold the Merkur, the Lincoln Mercury dealers. Yeah. Bob Y. Steve, is a one-time tow truck driver, what was your most interesting tow? If you go to VinWiki on YouTube, I did an entire video for Ed Bolian about tow truck stories. And I got to tow all kinds of wacky things. The very first car I ever towed was upside down on its roof, dry pavement, middle of the night, and I had to flip it over before towing it. And I also, for instance, towed a car where somebody ran the car into a house trying to dodge a rock that was in someone else's front yard. I'm trying to remember what other stories I told there, but I had 4 or 5 of them that were kind of wild like that. And you do see some crazy stuff. I was in a very sedate small town, Birmingham, Michigan, Oakland County, north of Detroit, and some nights nothing would happen. But in the summertime, it seemed you get these really weird calls at 3:00 in the morning. One car I towed was I only did one fatality, and a guy ran a Z28 Camaro into an oak tree that's about this big around, and the tree didn't move. And very, very sad. It killed the driver. But I've never seen damage like that done to a car. It was crazy. So I urge you to go to VinWiki and simply type in Lehto, or actually go onto YouTube, type in Lehto, VinWiki, tow truck, and you'll get a video I did where I talked all about this down at Ed's studio in Atlanta. Oh, Daniel Kester says, yeah, and don't forget about towing the piano. I did, in fact, tow a piano one time. You can tow a piano, but you can't tune a piano. Wait, no, you can tune a piano also. Huh, okay. Somebody asked, what's the story about the low-flying owls? That is a long-term joke on the channel. And it has to do with, it started out, I did a story about an airplane that hit a car, and I remembered seeing a sign that I took a photograph of a road sign saying, beware of low-flying owls. And I used that as the thumbnail in that story. And it just became a joke ever since then. So somebody sent me in the low-flying owl sign, and I put it up. Hey, Canadian Robot Lady is in the house. Piano. Yeah. Thank you. By the way, CRL, people have been asking about you for the last half hour. So whenever you got here, your ears are probably burning beforehand. I pity the fool, says my mom actually hit an owl with a pickup a few years ago. I was in my brother's truck one day and he hit a bat. We saw a bat go like this and disappear. We stopped and we got out, and this bat stuck in the grill. A bat didn't make it. So Canadian Robot Lady was shopping, so her ears weren't burning. Buff Del Campo says we used to move safes with a tow truck. With the owner's permission, or was this being done at night surreptitiously? Oh, it's Trenton. Do you watch the 24 Hours of Daytona? I have before, but I don't know. The thing about it I think it's more interesting for the drivers than it is for the viewers. So Padre hit a flying squirrel. Was it airborne when you hit it? Because I think they're more gliding than they are flying, but I understand. That's sad. Eric in Tennessee, do you work on any cars? I don't anymore. I just I choose what I spend my time on. And lately I haven't had any clunkers. I'm not like David Tracy at the Autopian, who's always working on his cars because half his fleet is grounded. And I don't think he'd mind me saying that. But if something goes wrong with one of my cars, unless it's real simple, I'd probably just have someone else fix it. It depends on what that is, though. Like I used to change my own oil, and I don't do that anymore. Yeah, Don says all roads are emergency landing strips to light aircraft. The problem is this light aircraft was coming into a landing strip, and it clipped a car on a nearby road, and that's how they wound up being talked about on my channel. Padre says the squirrel was gliding across the road and our paths crossed. Mark Miller says, but Steve, you own Explorers. Is that a reference to how little work I do on cars? Because as I pointed out, my Explorer's been flawless. I've owned, I think now a total of, I lose track, either 6 or 7 Explorers. In the entire time of all those Explorers, I've never replaced a starter. I've never replaced a water pump. I've never had engine trouble, transmission trouble, never had the diffs looked at, nothing. One of them needed an alternator at 230,000 miles. People go, well, they're junky cars. Not based on my experience. So I will put my experience above internet chatter any day of the week. So it's Trinton. What was your favorite story from 2024 on your channel? I'd have to glance. I'm not quite sure. Bob Blah says car insurance companies might question if you hit the deer if the deer hit you. Very good friend of mine actually just had a car totaled by a deer, and his car was going like this, and the deer did impact the front fender, but it did not impact the front of the vehicle. And so he actually, but it happened so quickly, there's nothing he could do, but it managed to destroy the car from an insurance viewpoint. So, Void 425 says Ford might just know better than to sell you a lemon. Oh, Image Docray, if the Explorers are so good, why have you had so many? Right now I've got 2. One's got 160,000 miles on it. The other one's got 3,000 because I just bought it. I'm going to drive the old one until it falls apart, which might be another 50,000 miles. Several of them are leases, and turn them in at the end of the lease. So never had one break down, nothing. Lightning fan TB says Moika, fellow Suomalainen, Americalainen, greetings from not so sunny Clearwater, Florida. I believe that's something to the effect of a fellow Finnish American. With a little more time, I can pronounce some of those longer Finnish words. I don't understand them. I can pronounce them. I pity the fool, says my uncle once hit a moose with his pickup. He was a cattle rancher, had a guard on it, but the truck didn't look good. Moose are enormous, and we've got some moose in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. You do not want to hit one with your car. It's I mean, you don't want to hit a deer either, but it's not like a moose is like hitting a no. It's the difference between hitting like a Volkswagen and an armored truck. Okay, it's very, very different. Harry Selden says the people who get the cars with problems are usually a lot more vocal than the people who haven't had problems. There's also some other statistical issues, which I've talked about in the past. Vehicles that are on the road for a long, long time are often sold more often. And so when somebody buys a Ford Explorer, it's got 300,000 miles on it, and it's 20 years old, and it breaks down, like, what a piece of junk. It's like, yeah, it's 20 years old. It's been driven 300,000 miles. Meanwhile, all of the Hyundais are in the junkyard, so. Anthony Cook says, I just about hit a hot air balloon with a train. Now, hot air balloons aren't terribly maneuverable, but then again, neither are trains. Brett says I daily drive a 2003 Ford Explorer Limited with a 4.6 liter engine. I have a Mustang with the same year, same engine. It's incredibly reliable, and the V8 still gets 19 miles per gallon, which ain't bad for a V8. Coolio Canucks is watching the stream while staying warm at minus 28 Celsius. What's the farthest you've gotten something from on your display case? Um, I'm not sure about stuff that's still up, but I've gotten things sent to me from Europe and Japan, and I think I've gotten stuff from Australia. I'd have to think about it, but the vast majority of it comes from America. But I've gotten some things from Canada as well. Jack W, my 294,000-mile Ranger does burnouts, and I beat the living daylights out of it. I cleaned it up for you. Oh boy. Uh, Long black train says we're supposed to get snow here in Florida. Wow. Image Doe Cray, what's the longest road trip you've taken? Oh, I've done Detroit to Los Angeles and back a couple times. I went to law school out there and I drove out there and back a few times. And I've also had a couple trips to Florida and back, which from Michigan is quite a hike. Sometimes I listen to myself. Thanks for hanging out with us today. No, you're welcome. Um, Dean Stevenson, do you have to declare stuff from Australia? Well, when stuff gets sent internationally, they often make you put in the outside of the package what it is and what it's worth. I've actually mailed things to Australia and Canada, and they ask you that. Um, and so, usually it's a gift. It's worth $10. But I think they're more worried about contraband. Aaron Freeman, has Florida had snow since 1989? Long black train. I've always wondered, do you hate the sound of your own voice? I know I do. Many people say that. That's actually a common thing because most of us don't hear our voice the way others hear it because the way sound travels through your skull, believe it or not. And so when you first hear your recorded voice played back to you, I'm like, what is that? But I spent so long working in radio with headphones on that I've gotten used to the sound of my own voice. So I tolerate it now. Still not happy about it, but I tolerate it. Oh boy. Yolanda says, I noticed that all of the women in my family sound the same, and so I guess I probably sound like them. I think more people have probably heard their voice recorded now because they've heard videos and stuff shot with phones and so on. I mean, when I was growing up, the only place you heard your voice if you had a tape recorder, you hit record and you spoke into it, and then you played it back, a long time ago. Oh boy. Red Fox mad any plans on buying any new classic vehicles? I'm not quite sure. I have at least room for one more, but we'll see how it goes. Brad D, what do you think of Cooley Law School? Cooley Law School is a law school in Michigan, originally just in Lansing, but they've got different locations now scattered about the state. I believe Grand Rapids. I think Oakland University might even have a branch, and so on. And you graduate from there, you've got a law degree, and take the bar and pass the bar. A lot of famous people have gone there, but then again, some of them didn't do so well later in life. I think Ivan Boesky may have been a graduate, but hey, you can't help that. Marjan Kekavuski, I can't stand the sound of my own voice. Vusi. Victor Sauvage, your voice has credibility and authority. As long as I'm not giggling, right? Padre, my father and I sounded the same on the phone. Interesting. Harry Selden says the tape recorders were limited in the frequency range of the sounds he recorded. And if they had a built-in microphone, you're not going to get a whole lot done with that. Canadian robot lady is thinking if she ever got another toy, she'd get herself a Suzuki X90. Uh, MB says I only talk with an attorney present, so I hope they like the sound of my voice. Robert Torres says 1968 Charger RT with the Hemi and requisite Bumblebee stripe is a must-have. I like the 69 better. I had a 69 in high school. It wasn't a real RT, but I had the stripe on it. But I like the 69 better, in particular the taillights, because the 68's got the round ones. The 69's got the full across the back. I think it looks better, but that's a matter of taste, you know. Yolanda says, my husband and I got pulled over and the cop asked to search our car. My husband asked if he could know the reason why he wanted, and the cop said, no reason. Just fishing, just fishing. I remember when I was I'm not a little kid. I remember when I was younger, getting pulled over by a cop, and I wasn't doing anything wrong. It was late at night. And the cop goes, I want to search your car. And I go, okay, I don't care. Go ahead. Cop's searching my car. And finally he's like, okay, found nothing. And I thought to myself, like, he wasn't going to find anything, just wasting his time. But whatever. Marjan says, I love your voice. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I do. Harry Selden says, hey, you're in luck. Steve is an attorney and he is present. Ron Jones, my first car was a 70 Challenger. Wish I still had it. My brother had a 70 Challenger, black. He had a 318 in it, but it was still a very, very cool car. I'm not quite sure. The Challenger doesn't quite have the cachet of the Cudas, right? But they're very, very similar. But I think the Cudas have better lines. But the Challenger, same idea. Mark Miller, did you say your Explorer is a 92? No, it's an 02. 02. Bob Summers, why didn't you go to Cooley? Well, I didn't apply to Cooley. I applied to a couple of law schools in Michigan and then one in Los Angeles. And I went to one in Los Angeles because they had a 2-year law program. So I went out there and got my law degree a year faster by doing it that way. But I've known many people who did go to Cooley. Also, Cooley's in Lansing. And I live closer to Detroit. And I did at the time. So for me to go to Cooley would have been the same as going to a school, someplace else. And Nathan Bob says they could always find something anyway. And, they could always find something. But the problem I had was when I worked at the radio station in Bad Axe, Michigan, I got one day off a week and I'd often come home and I'd leave the radio station at midnight when I shut the place down, get in my car and I'd be driving through northern Oakland County about 1:30 in the morning. And a lot of times it's bored cops. What are you doing at 1:30 in the morning? Driving home from work. Where do you work? Bad Axe. Now they're like, oh my gosh, this guy's making stuff up now. Alphabetizist says, greeting and salutations from Bentonville, Arkansas. Bentonville, Arkansas. Isn't there a big store based out of Bentonville? I could be wrong. Yeah. Steve says, if a cop wants to search my car, go ahead, but can you clean it up while you're at it? Oh, boy. Art asks, glad to see you. And the folding chair in the background. Long black train. I went to Harvard. I actually didn't go to college, but I went to Harvard. It's kind of like when I went to London back in November, went and saw my friend's band play at Royal Albert Hall, but the day before went and saw them play in Cambridge. So I can tell people I went to Cambridge. Yeah, I went to Cambridge. Oh, Dan Boyd, I prefer a 59 Impala to a 58. There's a couple of years the Impala with a really, really weird tail setup that it scares me. It scares me. I pity the fool. I worked with a guy who did some part-time radio work. Once that a cop pulled him over, and then over the speaker he said, "Country sucks," and then left. Oh. S says I had a car searched when I was young and the cop found something I thought I lost. Hey, that's what that was. Oh boy. Charles Widmore says Vanishing Point. 70 Challenger, sharp car. Yeah, before it hit the bulldozer. Oh, Jerry Brown says the cops can search your car, throw stuff on the ground, and give you a ticket for littering. Image Doe Cray, what years were you at Southwestern? 89 through 91. John Michael Carmus says Walmart is based out of Bentonville. Alphabetizist says you are the first person to pronounce my YouTube name correctly. Unbelievable. Inconceivable. Oh, the prodigal stranger. Hey, Steve, I'm thinking of becoming a lawyer. Can I buy your diploma? Um, just go online. I'm sure you can probably find novelty diplomas. Have it filled out. Bob blah blah says when the cops pulled me over, I would just toss whatever it was out the hole in the floorboard under the floor mat. I wonder how many people have tried that. That's funny. Now, Steve says people are calling 911 because they can't get into TikTok. I've had other people claim that TikTok is not down, and I wouldn't know because I don't use TikTok. So I don't even know where any of this goes. I mean, I don't know. Mark Miller, would you take my tests for me? Yes, but it's been 35 years since I studied. Standard deviation, I believe they used a Camaro for that final scene. I've never actually looked into what vehicles they actually used in that movie. So wouldn't surprise me. You can often cut something out at the last second and smash something else. So Chuck Whitehead, why is it legal for FedEx and UPS to stop on the roads to deliver? You must not have spent much time in court, my friend. I've seen FedEx drivers, UPS drivers in court fighting tickets. And they're in their uniform and they're saying, Your Honor, I was delivering some packages. And the cops always say, yeah, or the judge always says, yeah, but there's a law that says you can't do that. And like, yeah, but I've got like a 75-pound box and it's got to go right there. And the nearest parking lot is like 3 miles that way. And they're like, and they almost always come going to break or something. But no, it depends on the city you're in. Some cities will ticket those guys and some cities won't. It depends how it goes. Daniel Kester, I got a name pronunciation for you to try, Steve. Naudry? I don't know. See, the problem always is if a word is out of context, you don't know. But if I said, oh, by the way, it's the name of a town in Italy, you go, oh, okay, that might help me. Or it's the name of a person from Finland. I go, oh, okay. And so if I have a story with a name in it, I often try to look them up to get pronouncers on them. And a couple times I've gotten them so close, but then people still, it doesn't matter. People will still call you out on it and go, you mispronounced that. So I did the story the other day about Cleelm, and somebody goes, it's Cleelm. But the funny thing is, the guy who sent me the story said, by the way, Steve, it's pronounced Cleelm, 2 syllables, Cleelm. And then I mentioned before, a guy called me from Cleelm, and he's telling me all these things. Oh, by the way, you mispronounced the town name because it's Cleelm. I said, oh, okay. But the guy who sent me the story said Cleelm. And so I guess I should double check everything. But who's got that kind of time? Joseph Lacey, my first 84 Mustang T-Top GT was a bit of a cop magnet. Yeah, I've driven a couple cars that were like that. My 69 Dodge Charger was painted bright yellow, and I got pulled over a few times there too. Dan Busey confirms it was a Camaro that went into the bulldozers. I'm more concerned about that mini bike that the girl was driving earlier in the movie. Ron Bozoid says, can I sue Uber for false imprisonment because their autonomous car wouldn't unlock their doors to let me out? You hear about these stories. There's also a story about the guy who's been driven to the airport, and the taxi was supposedly doing loops in the parking lot. But I've heard different versions of that now, because apparently you could stop that with your app, but I don't know. Tim Noel says, speaking of name pronunciations, I live near La Jolla, California, and for years I never knew I was mispronouncing it. Is it La Jolla, I assume? Bob Summers had a guy flash me his Navy SEAL ID from a novelty site. The greatest thing of all time is that when you meet someone who claims to be a Navy SEAL, 99.9% of the time they're not. It's just one of those things that guys say at bars, like, I'm a Navy SEAL. And no. Oh, Robert Torrey says my last name is pronounced like story. I assume that's what you mean by that. Void425 says, even if a person mispronounces a word, if you understand what they were saying, it does not make a difference. Yes and no. The problem is that if it gets hung up, like a person gets like, what do you say? It can cause them to miss what follows. But what annoys me is I'll be talking and I'll say something in a video like 4 times. And one time I will misspeak and mispronounce it slightly. And I'll get 100 emails or comments going, Steve, you said it right those 3 times, but that one time you got it wrong. Just thought you should know. You think I didn't know? Well, how do you think this is constructive? And I don't know why people will waste their time sending that email, because now I got to deal with your email and the video. I'm not going to go back and fix the video. By the way, I do occasionally get people go, oh, Steve, you need to take the video down. You mispronounced a word. Oh. Metric ton 81. I'm sure you've covered this already, but can the lemon law apply to defensive coordinators? It applies to whoever it is who's supposed to count how many players are on the field before the ball is snapped. I don't know. There's somebody whose job it is to make sure the correct packages go out and stuff. And so 2 people made a mistake. The 12th guy and the person supposed to watch that. Somebody shouldn't have been out there. 2 people should have caught that. So Roxanne, and you just delete their email. No, I block their email. Oh boy. Eric S, do you have a snowblower or a plow? Dreading snowblowing in 0-degree temps, so I'm convincing myself this is at least educational. I have a really good snowblower. I recently bought a big snowblower. I got sick of shoveling, and I had a friend who'd come over and plow my driveway for me. And I went out and bought a 3-stage snowblower. This thing's got all kinds of shifters and cranks and handles, and it's got heated hand grips. And you're still standing out there. You're walking behind it. But man, it flings the snow. You just walk along and watch the snow fly. And I think back when I was a little kid shoveling snow, like, oh my gosh. So Daniel Kester says you got to remake those videos if the one person doesn't like it. Oh, well, the one thing I can tell you is that I've toyed with the idea, maybe as an April Fool's joke, taking a video of mine that gets the most complaints about mispronunciations of words or opinions or whatever, and re-editing it and doing another video. So I'm going to say at the beginning, hey, everybody, I got a lot of complaints about the upcoming video, so I fixed it. And then start playing the video. And as soon as I hit something that someone complained about, stopping and then explaining that more clearly and say, okay, back to video. But that wouldn't be that funny. To make it funny, I would then anticipate all the things that people would complain about in the corrections and shoot another video where I would start saying, I'm going to now do this. And then the original video would play, the correction would play, and then the correction of the correction would play, and then now back. and see if I could take like a 5-minute, 8-minute video and make it like 45 minutes long with nothing but corrections. Oh. Ron Bozoid says they in Tempe, Arizona, passed a law that's making smoking indoors illegal, even in your own house. I hadn't heard that. I wonder how enforceable that is. Um, I had to see the law. I'll take a look. I'm sure somebody will send me a thing about it. Canadian robot lady. I'll help correct the corrections. JR Nana Bloomer. Bloopers. A lot of people ask me if I could put bloopers into the end of my videos. And the thing is, my bloopers aren't that funny because most of the bloopers that I cut out are simply me either misreading something or quite often I clear my voice, clear my throat, or cough. And so I can cough and just cut it, and you'll see the splice, but you won't hear me cough. So if I were to take the cough and put that at the end like it was a blooper, it wouldn't be that funny. It's like, dude, are you sick? Why are you coughing so much? Just Basic Guy says on Monday you did the story of the bumper. It sounded like the person who was not at fault, assuming someone else was, would he have a good cause of action to recover his losses from the other party? Well, this depends on the insurance laws of that state. And so in Michigan, your insurance takes care of you, their insurance takes care of them. And then most states would say that the damages are the cost of repair and how much that bumper costs. And I guarantee there's a price for it. Now, you could say, but that's not really what it costs because you can't get one for that. To which they say, but whose fault is that? So, STP World says, I should sell an RV at General RV. I think I'd be good at it. Don't you just change the price from the list? I should sell an RV. I'm not sure what you're asking me there. Sorry. Canadian robot lady claims that there are contrarians in the comments. No, there's not. Ron Bozoid says, here's the statute, the Smoke Free Arizona Act. Well, if there is such a thing, and I'd have to read it, but I'm not gonna do it right now. I suspect it'll get challenged in court in about Tuesday, because that's when the courts reopen. I'd say about 9:01 or 8:31, depending on when they open. Irish Scott Lad, who does the voice at the end of your videos? Canadian Robot Lady, meet Irish Scott Lad. Irish Scott Lad, meet the Canadian Robot Lady. She's in the comments here. She's in the chat. What up? Did you come here for an argument? Oh, long black train. Oh my God, he just coughed. That means he's dying. No, they go, hey, you have tuberculosis. You clearly have tuberculosis. You need to go to a doctor immediately. Immediately. I actually had several people write to me, and they're serious. You've recently had a stroke. You need to go to a doctor because you've had a stroke. Oh boy. Hammond Egger, you should do an FAQ. Same questions seem to appear a lot. They do, but I've actually done I've done an entire video explaining what's on my set. And the very next day, people go, hey, what's that thing on your set? Now, David Cuney, I don't know why you'd write this. Steve's a self-conscious pothead. I don't get that. Among other things, I don't smoke and I never have smoked. So I don't even I assume that's a joke, but spam shall pass says I keep my fungible widgets in my turban. Johnny Knoxville says you have jaundice, diabetes, heart disease, and cancer, and you forgot a few other things. Scoliosis. ALS. Um, uh, oh, premature thinning of the hair, dentures. I've had people actually ask me about my dentures. They go, "Hey, didn't notice you're wearing dentures. When did that happen?" Oh, okay, okay. Dan Boyd, Steve's a motorhead. Oh. Sometimes I listen to myself says you could have a scroll on the bottom of your screen like the news to answer all the FAQs. That's not a bad idea. I have some friends who do do videos on Facebook and YouTube, and they've got a scroll at the bottom. You know, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and I'm like, that's annoying. Stop that. Bob Loblaws is being a judge a 24-hour a day job. I see decisions being handed down on Sunday afternoon. It's very uncommon. Now, it might be that they publish something, but the weird part is that, you know, judges hear oral arguments, they read briefs, they go back, they deliberate, they take a vote, somebody writes an opinion, they circulate the opinion, they agree, they don't agree, then eventually they publish it. And when they issue it for publication, it's quite often late in the day on a weekday, but I'm not familiar with any coming out on a Saturday or Sunday. Waddley 99, lupus. Lupus. That is not something I've been diagnosed with yet. NZ Kiwi NZ says late, but hello from New Zealand. And she says hello to the Canadian robot lady. And I've been waiting for you. I'm always waiting for my Australian and my New Zealand friends to check in. I understand they're not the same. Don't say, Steve, we're not us. No. I understand that. But you are in the same hemisphere. Padre. Don't forget the heartbreak of psoriasis. I've been accused of that also. Oh boy. Jerry Brown says Julia Roberts asked David Letterman if his teeth were real. I didn't see that. By the way, for those of you who are David Letterman fans and have been kind of going through withdrawals now that he's been off the air for so long, go onto YouTube and look up the Lyle the Intern skits. I can't describe it appropriately, but he did a recurring skit where this kid would walk out oblivious to the fact the TV show is going on, who was Lyle the Intern. And David would have little 5-10 minute conversations with this guy, and you could string them all together and watch how it evolved over time. It's absolutely hilarious. Bob blah blah early onset rigor mortis. Yeah. Have not been accused of that yet. Richard E, I'm a huge fan of your channel. Huge with a capital U, right? Hey, Dean Stevenson is also in New Zealand. Thank you for checking. I appreciate that. Jason Brindamar, you're looking awfully pale. Okay, I get that a lot, but I also used to get accused of tanning too much. And so I can't win. Manuel Perez, hello from Australia. Love the Canadian robot lady. It's not me. 07 says David Letterman is more available now than he was when he was on late night. Oh, he was famous for being a curmudgeon and not talking to anybody. And I read interviews with people who worked on the show who said that they were told, by the way, don't talk to him, avoid him. If you see him, like, he was very militant about it. He wanted to come out and do an interview and not have spoken to the person before for fear that they'd like lose some of that edge you have, you know? So Nicholas Byram says the Commanders won. The command, like a football team. Who are they? William Page says, when I first saw a Honda Civic, I thought it was a Roman numeral. Yeah, it's violating a couple rules of Roman numerals, but yeah, I can see that. Dan Boyd says Letterman was a terrible interviewer. That's a tough call. And the reason I say that is a lot of late night hosts aren't great interviewers. And it depends on what you're looking for from an interview. Because you want the interview to be entertaining, they often were entertaining. But they're also They were unusual, absolutely. But the show was funny to watch. The show was entertaining. So Irish Scott Lads, I watched the documentary in the turbo car. I seen your face pop up and talk about it. Yes. I was in the documentary that Haggerty put about the turbine car. I'm the first voice you hear. You hear my voice first. Oh. Tim Noel says my favorite host late night was Conan O'Brien. Now, see, and here I'm just going to let you know, I don't like Conan O'Brien as an interviewer because I can show you clips where he's got Norm Macdonald on. Norm Macdonald's in the middle of a joke, and Conan O'Brien will just step in and ruin the timing of it. And so I don't think that there's anybody that everybody is going to agree on as to who the best interviewers are out there. Yeah, what if points out the Canadian Robot Lady has her own channel, and yes, she's got her own channel on YouTube. I keep telling her to put up more content, but she's getting there. She's getting there. David Turk says, "What about Craig Ferguson?" Again, Craig Ferguson is a hilarious guy. I'm not sure how great of an interviewer he is, but I was always entertained watching him. Chip says Norm is funny, Conan is not. You said it, not me. Oh, Mindbend says Letterman was the guy that invented the Velcro suit. Yes, and he did a ton of inventive stuff, and a lot of it was ripped off later by other people and other shows and so on. But he had guys on there, and then he himself obviously was part of it, where they would ask themselves, like, what can we do that would be entertaining? And they didn't care if it was different or not. And they broke a lot of the conventions of the typical talk show. So Marjan K. Kavusi says you have to know when to stop talking when you do an interview. Yes, I agree. Fast Eddie says the best David Letterman interview was with Cher. I'm not sure I remember that. Did she give him a hard time, or did he give her a hard time? Ron Bozoid says, my comments aren't appearing now. And yet I knew that he said that. Oh, boy. Hey, Canadian Robot Lady's got a new GoPro. That's cool. That's cool. By the way, I got to tell you, I was cleaning up a mess over here, and I found one of my favorite things from the old set, the Canadian $5 bill with the belted kingfisher on it. And I've got two of them. And that is, of course, a very cool bird. We've got them here in Michigan also, the belted kingfisher. So today's bird is the belted kingfisher. Oh, boy. Sometimes I listen to myself. Super Dave Osborne was the best. And that's a great example where Super Dave Osborne was unusual. But David Letterman let him do what he was doing. And it was just so unusual and funny. I read an interview with one of the guys off Letterman's staff, longtime guy. And he said, they're talking about what David Letterman thought was funny, what he would do. And don't forget the recurring character of like the guy beneath the seats or the fugitive guy or the Terminator guy and all that stuff. And it was Chris, what's his name? Somebody will tell me. I had a mental blank there. But a lot of people didn't think that was funny. But David Letterman did think it was funny. And it made him laugh. Chris Elliott, thank you, Charles. And Chris Elliott made David Letterman laugh. And so you watch the Chris Elliott pieces, and some of them were funny, but some of them were strange. But Chris Elliott never broke character. And you would watch it and you'd realize that David Letterman is over there laughing so hard. that he can't help himself. And it was just kind of funny for him to do that and say, something like, eh, if I think it's funny, we should put it on. Oh yeah, Chris Elliott. Oh my gosh. Um, and don't forget all the stuff like dropping stuff off the building and all the wacky stuff they did in the street out in front of the theater, and stupid pet tricks when he had a guy who had the dogs that were trained to chase sheep, and he had the guy chase his dogs chase the sheep through the studio into an elevator. I mean, and they're doing stuff that nobody would have done on late night talk shows. And so, my one of my favorite things, and this is why David Letterman was a genius. He came out and he's doing an opening monologue, and while you're watching it, there's just this really bad edit, and then he walks off stage, and a camera's following him, and he walks around, and I may have changed floors. He walks around a bunch of different places, and he goes into a room and opens up the door, and the guys go, "What are you doing here?" And he goes, "Can we cut that last joke out?" And the guy goes, "Yeah, but it's going to leave a really, really bad edit in the show." And he goes, "I don't care. That joke was that bad. I want you to cut it out." And they cut it out. And they aired it like that. And the funny part was, as you're watching it, you're going, "Wait, there's that really weird edit. And now he's going someplace." And then, of course, he did the thing he was talking about, and very, very messed with your head at first, but it's very, very funny. Andy New York 29 says the belted kingfisher is the most common kingfisher in North America. They're also the ringed and green kingfisher, but they're mostly down south at the border area. And I can tell you that I've been out riding a mountain bike in the woods near a river, and you hear this chattering sound, and all of a sudden this kingfisher goes zing, and it's zooming along right above the river top like it's a fighter jet. And they make a very distinctive sound as they call to one another. But I've seen them, and I've also seen them perched in trees, like getting ready to dive bomb. And I've also known somebody who said a belted kingfisher cleaned out their goldfish pond in their front yard. So it happens. Oh boy. Scott Summers says, yeah, Jerry Lawler and the Andy Kaufman story, which turns out the entire thing was set up, but when they were accused of it, they denied it. And anyways. Carl's Corner says the game is starting. Thanks. See you later. Have fun. Good luck. Hey, for us here in Detroit, NFL season's over. Oh, Jerry Brown says, I guess the show wasn't live. Well, it was recorded live. Robert Torrey, Letterman's 360-degree show, where the camera rotated 360 degrees during the show. Oh boy, blah blah blah. I couldn't stand Andy Kaufman. Didn't like his character at all. Andy Kaufman's one of those guys where when I saw him doing what he did, I'm like, I don't think this is funny. But then later on, I realized that what he was doing wasn't funny in the traditional sense, but it was funny in that he was doing it. And it was kind of like anti-funny. I don't know how else to describe it. And I mean, I remember reading about him. He went to some college back east someplace. And they're like, tonight, Andy Kaufman. And they introduce him. He pulls a stool out, puts up a microphone, and he starts reading a book. That's all he did. And of course, some people are going, hey, this isn't funny. He just keeps reading, like not out loud, he's just reading a book to himself. Oh, Ron Bozoid, is Andy Kaufman still dead? I'm pretty sure he is. Pretty sure he is. Nathan Spreitzer, I can't stand Trevor Noah. Yeah, he's one of those guys. He's a spinoff too far. I liked him when he was on other shows as a reporter kind of thing, but no. Steve, Andy Kaufman, thank you very much. Yeah, don't forget he did have a role in Taxi as well. Oh, Image Joe Chris says he read The Great Gatsby. Oh boy, oh boy. The Midnight Bandwidth says, "Glad to see you're doing well, Steve. Stay warm in Michigan the next few days here. Any tips on staying warm?" Yeah, stay indoors. When I lived in California, they had ozone alerts, and they'd say, "Don't go outside if you can avoid it." Same rule applies to cold weather. Stay inside if you can. Mark Miller, musically, what are you listening to right now? Oh boy, I listen to all kinds of stuff. I don't even know where to begin, but I'll mention concerts as I attend them from time to time. And Tim Noel, what did you think of Johnny Carson? I never met Johnny Carson. I remember watching him, and Johnny Carson was, and this is true, the quintessential nighttime talk host. He was perfect. He had a sense of humor. He interviewed people. He did well. He didn't get in the way. He told jokes. He was funny, and he was one of those guys that, as you watched him, you thought to yourself, like, just a nice guy, just a nice guy. And so I think Johnny Carson was great. So War Eagle says he is still the king of late night, and I think most late night hosts will tell you that he was a template for late night television. Now Joseph Lacey says you're all wrong. Arsenio Hall was the pinnacle of entertainment. And I'm gonna let you know right now, I saw Jay Leno performing at a stand-up thing here in Michigan a little over a year ago. And Arsenio Hall was with him on the bill. And those of you who don't know, Arsenio Hall had a talk show that competed with Jay Leno at one point in time. And Arsenio Hall actually said things to the press like, "We're going to kick his butt." And I always wondered how how they got along. And then I thought, oh wait, they're touring together right now. And I think Jay's kind of like, yeah, that's just business. And so I think Jay Leno is coming to the casino in Windsor later on this year. And on the bill, Arsenio Hall. And by the way, the show I saw where Arsenio Hall was the first act and Jay came out second, they were both amazing. And I'd never seen either of them do a full stand-up show before, like the whole thing. And I saw Jay do his whole stand-up show. I've not seen it twice. And Arsenio Hall, and these guys are professionals where they can walk out there and do a 45-minute or an hour-long set, and it's good. I mean, normally you think Jay Leno comes out, tells 3 jokes, and then gets the show started. No. He can do the full set, and it was amazing. So, yeah. And Canadian Robot Lady, Johnny Carson's 25th anniversary show was the funniest show I thought they ever put together of him and the crew. And his farewell shows were really good also. Bette Midler singing "Wind Beneath My Wings" was actually a touching moment. So it's been now over 2 hours. I want to thank all of you for hanging out with me on a cold Sunday afternoon. We will talk soon. And as always, during the week, typical shows. And I might do a pop-up here and there if I have a moment and I'm in front of the camera. I might, hey, let's fire this thing up and see who's around. But Sundays, of course, are always on the calendar. 1 o'clock on Sundays. That's 1 o'clock Eastern time. Otherwise, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.